Hello there and welcome to a rather impromptu special edition of Premier League Weekly on the Phoenix Club. I'm Josh, United fan, joined by Tom, which you can see from his shirt, a Chelsea fan. Now, ordinarily at this point, I'd ask how you're doing, Tom, but I don't think that's a question that's particularly necessary after your team's 6-0 demolition at the hands of table toppers Man City. Now, usually we'd dedicate about 7 or 8 minutes in the regular Premier League Weekly show to talking about this. But there's just so many issues going on at Chelsea at the moment, and we don't want to talk about them every single week in the regular magazine show. So we thought we'd give this a show of its own as the game went out today. So, first things first, Tom, let's just start with the game itself. 6-0, Chelsea's heaviest defeat since losing to Nottingham Forest 7-0 in April 1991, which means it's also Chelsea's biggest ever Premier League defeat. What are your thoughts from the game, simply?
So, I'm angry, I'm upset, I'm sad. This is just not the club I've grown up watching, man. I mean, I've supported the club 15 years.
Yeah.
This is what Arsenal were doing at the end of Wenger. This isn't Chelsea Football Club.
It's funny you mention Arsenal, because it's reminiscent, really, of when United beat Arsenal 8-2. And obviously, when you got two massive teams coming together, you expect it to be a close affair. And the gulf in class is just ridiculous.
But the thing is as well, though, it's not like this club having spent money. And Forest 3, like a nice true butter, meant that after 30 minutes, they literally could play at their own pace. And they netted 2 goals, basically, with absolutely no effort whatsoever. And I mean, to Gary Neville, who goes, well, Chelsea attacked quite well today. There was just no potency there, you know? There was no potency. I thought Hazard was poor. I mean, he made some few nice runs. I thought Higuain was ineffective, exactly everything that he wasn't brought in for. And Pedro was just anonymous, really.
Yeah, I mean, there's just so many talking points to take from that. I mean, let's start with the attack for a second. You said that Gary Neville was mentioning that they were attacking relatively well, but with respect to Chelsea, you attack well, but you don't score any goals. Are you really attacking that well at all?
No, you're completely right, mate. It happens week on week. And yeah, okay, we scored 5 past Huddersfield. Great. I mean, great. But then it's so frustrating, man, because you go away from home and it's just spineless. The players don't have any, what Troy Deeney would call cojones.
Yeah.
Like, you just get there and there's no... They'll see the City players run back and suddenly they kind of know they're not going to score. So take it out to the wings, cross the ball in, and it's just a load of garbage, really. Just really, really sad.
Let me take the defence aspect of it. Obviously, conceding 6 goals is never good for any side, no matter where you are in the league and what league you're in. And certainly in my fantasy league, having Kepa and 3 defenders hasn't done me any favours either. But, I mean, it's just been a disaster, hasn't it? Considering how you've had Mourinho and Conte as your previous 2 managers, so regimented in their defence. But this isn't really demonstrative of a defence that is used to being so solid. It's just an absolute mess. And you can say that City were attacking well. Aguero scored a hat-trick. You can't, generally speaking, score a hat-trick without being on top form. But to concede 6, that's just another matter altogether, isn't it?
Well, I couldn't agree more. And I think you go through that defence and there are real problems. I mean, there's been an agenda against Marcos Alonso since the start of this season. And at first I thought it was harsh, but his defensive play in back 4 is just shocking. He never gets back. He never puts in the tackles that we need. It's really not good. Luis and Rudiger, both of them in this season, have played some blinding games, but when they're off form, they're absolutely shocking. They will go out of position and misplace passes, particularly Rudiger, and they play some real rash tackles that just aren't. They're just rash and they're going to cause problems. As Pinaqueta again today, shocking tackle. I've used the word shocking a lot here. because there's no other words, That tackle for the penalty was just stupid. I mean, zero game management there. Even at 4 down, you just don't do that. Simple as that.
But who do you blame, though? Is Maurizio Sarri to blame? Because I know that you can cite all the ongoing backroom issues, and he's obviously not a happy bunny regardless of this result. Before this result, there's something not quite right going on with him. Other players, maybe as is customary with Chelsea, and we discussed that on the show a couple of weeks ago, it seems to be a bit of a trend that they don't, there comes a point where they just don't like playing for the manager. And do you think it could be a ploy from them to get Sarri out, or are they perhaps conforming to Sarri ball, whatever Sarri ball means, and that's an end product of Sarri ball?
I think Sarri has to be to blame. I agree with him when he says that his football at Napoli works and that it should be the blueprint for this Chelsea side. I couldn't agree with that anymore. But what I think is a problem is when he plays, when he doesn't change it, he doesn't change formation, he doesn't change tactics. He wants a pressing game away to probably the best pressing team in Europe. I mean, we're not going to press them off the park at their home grounds. I mean, and the game management is so poor. I mean, he makes a substitute after 51 minutes. I mean, why? Just do it at half time. I mean, what's going to change in 6 minutes? The coach, and I have a problem with the way he says, this is not my football. I mean, Maurizio, you can't just package your football Napoli and drop it in West London and get a team that gets 90 points and comes close to winning leagues. If, even Pep Guardiola in his first year at Man City would change to 3-4-3, 3-5-2, 4-4-2, he would try things to try and get the team playing his style of football. But Sarri just seems unwilling to do that. I mean, a lot of fans have said on Twitter this evening that our team screams out for 4-2-3-1. But he just refuses to do it because they aren't good enough at his football, whatever that is.
I mean, considering with Sarri and the problems surrounding him, what did you make of the fact that he completely rejected Pep Guardiola at full time? Was that a sign of bad sportsmanship, a sign of anger, a sign of frustration? What did you make of that?
Well, I suppose officially he said he didn't see Pep. I mean,
but surely though, whether you see him or not, you're going to go to the opposition manager as a force of habit at the full-time whistle. Is that not the case?
Well, they were notorious friends. But the weird thing is that they would. The fact he just walked past him, if it's meant to show defiance or anger to the Chelsea fans, I think that he's got it completely wrong. I think it just shows bad sportsmanship, the fact that he's frustrated and unhappy at the club and is kind of in some ways losing the dressing room. You don't do that regardless of the result. I'm sorry, Maurizio. It's just really poor conduct.
You said that he's lost the dressing room. Has he lost the fan base as well? I mean, you specifically. Are you Sarri in? Sarri out? Maybe even Sarri sort it out?
Firstly, I'm not sure he's lost the dressing room. He may or may not have. After a performance like that, some would think he does. I mean, you look at Hazard at full-time crying his eyes out. I mean, I wouldn't blame him for leaving. He cares about this club. Regards to me, I've been staunchly Sarri in till this point. I've coped with a 4-0 loss at Bournemouth. I've coped with some shocking performances at Arsenal, Tottenham, and us not being in the top 4. But at this point, I really am on the edge. And I think if we want to get Sarri out, we have to do it now because we've got a cup final, we've got European fixtures coming up, we've got FA Cup against Man United. And for those games, I want us to stay competitive. I don't want the squad to use one of those games to tell the board they've had enough of Maurizio Sarri. Right. And I think if Sarri is unwilling to change, he's got to go. Simple as that.
We'll come on to the League Cup final in a moment. But on the line of, let's just say, Sarri out becomes a reality, who did Chelsea then replace him with? I can't even think of any obvious candidates. I mean, do they go for Jose Mourinho Part 3? Do you try maybe Zinedine Zidane? I mean, I'm just looking, before we started recording, at the managers from the last 2 decades. And there was, Gianluca Vialli, Claudio Ranieri, Jose Mourinho, Avram Grant, Philippe Scolari, Gus Hiddink, and he was also back again. AVB, Ancelotti, Di Matteo, Benitez, Conte, and now Sarri. I think there were 6 Italian managers there, a couple Portuguese, a Brazilian, a Spaniard. So there's very much this Hispanic European aura about Chelsea at the moment. Do you think that it might be worth Chelsea going for maybe a more British approach? And I know this sounds contradictory in a Norwegian, but Solskjaer is very much embodying a more British mentality. And I know that's the United mentality, and United and Chelsea are different clubs. But do you think that it might be worth going something more along those lines, going for a completely fresh approach at Chelsea? Because whatever's happening isn't working. And I don't know about you, but if I were a Chelsea fan, I'd be so frustrated with this constant trend of winning the title, manager sacked in the next season because he doesn't win it. Next season, manager wins the title, next season doesn't win it and he's sacked. I'd rather have a bit of consistency then. That is consistent, but in the wrong way, in my opinion.
Okay, so my view on that would be that actually, if you're looking at who comes next, for me, it would have to be Zola on interim, because I don't think Hiddink would come back. And I think Zola at least has some managerial experience. A lot of people have been telling me on Twitter he's done badly at Birmingham, he's done badly in his other limited experience, but he almost took Watford to the Premier League within a game of getting into the Premiership and played exciting football with them. And I think, like Solskjaer, he'll win the respect of the dressing room almost straight away, in a similar kind of Di Matteo effect. I think in the longer term, instead of looking at United, I'd look more at Juventus and what they did with Conte, and possibly bring Frank Lampard, because he knows what it takes to play the great Chelsea side. And like Conte, he will be intense and he will demand it from his players week in, week out. And I think a lot of the whole respect dynamic with the dressing room would be resolved through that. And I think also his close links with Roman Abramovich and Marina Granovskaya.
So you mentioned Roman Abramovich, and you mentioned that he might be looking for the next recruit. But I think to a certain extent he's part of the problem as well. And I know that there's no doubt that Roman Abramovich is the sole reason why Chelsea Football Club has enjoyed the last 15 years of just brilliance, and that's why they've managed to enjoy their most successful period in their history, because of that man. But by the same token, it's also because of him that there is so much instability continuously at the club, and it's also potentially because of the uncertainty around him even still owning the club in the next few months and even the next year to come, that might also be part of the problem. So would you like to even see a new revolution at Chelsea in terms of the ownership?
I don't know how much of the problem is Roman, to be honest with you, because we don't know how much Roman does in the management of the club. A lot say he stepped back in recent years from his main role. And I think it would be very interesting to know that before I make any judgments on him. I think his choice of backroom board staff has been quite poor since he sacked Peter Kenyon and Ron Gawley as chief executives. And I think we've even Seminalo going. I hate Seminalo. I think his choices were poor. But even without him, we have no sports director and no rudder, really, in our scouting department. And it's costing us dearly that our board is making such poor decisions.
There's only a couple of questions really left to ask. Firstly, looking ahead to the League Cup final in a couple of weeks' time. Obviously, it's a rematch of today's game. What do you think is going to happen? Obviously, surely it's not going to be another 6-0. But equally, it's a cup final. It's a Wembley. Anything can happen. But do you think that Chelsea have what it takes to overcome such heavy defeats so soon after being destroyed by City, or do you think that it's just going to be another case of just lying back, roll over, and just hope it isn't another 6-0?
So I'm tracking it for that game. I think if the managerial position is the same and the squad mentality is the same, I think the best we can hope for is probably 2-0, 3-0 City, because then we're not going to change shape. Clearly, Maurizio knows how to beat Pep Guardiola, but it is clear that the players are not operating his plans, and the positions have just been so poor that unless we change tactics or something, I think it's damage limitation. And I think going into a cup final with that on my mind is the most depressing thing I think I've ever had since being a football fan. Going into a cup final saying, do you know what? Let's just limit the damage. That's not what cup finals are for, you know?
So do you fancy your chances against United in the FA Cup as well? Or do you think that they're just both write-offs?
Well, we haven't lost to a big team at home this season, really. So I think that one's more could go either way. Obviously, Ollie's playing much better football with you guys now. But when you're at home, there's always a chance that the players will pull it out.
Yeah,
but I think the problem lies that the players are just spineless. And I think the shape is spineless. It just doesn't enable us any freedom, because you can't press Man City away from home or in a big pitch. Our team just does not have the technical ability to do that. So, I mean, I really hope it's not a write-off, because we're not going to win the Europa League playing like that. So, I really don't know, mate.
I've just actually thought of another quick question before we come on to the final question, which is on the topic of Eden Hazard. Now, he's obviously been reportedly touted by Real Madrid for a long time now. Now, I appreciate that what's gone on isn't entirely his fault, or even, a significant part of his fault at all. But surely he's not doing himself any favours, and he's not really putting himself in a good light for prospective buyers if he is playing in a side that's getting battered 4-0 by Bournemouth, battered 6-0 by City.
I don't think this results on him, actually, at all. I said he was poor at the start. He did give examples. I think he would argue that if he played alongside better players, these sort of things won't happen. I mean, the defense wasn't his fault. The lack of dynamism in midfield wasn't his fault. His dribbles were made in his own half, and that's shocking, I mean, I think if he wants to move to Madrid, he will be able to move to Madrid. I don't think that this will cause any problem for him in that regard, to be honest with you.
And again, that leaves another gaping hole open that Chelsea will have to fill. And given how things are going, you wouldn't really back them to find the like-for-like replacement. But on the final question, it's the 6-0 defeat, actually, the score deficit, the goal deficit that has put Chelsea down to 6th. Where do you see them ending up come the end of the season? Because United looking more and more likely to cement their place in that top 4. The goal difference in terms of Chelsea is, what a heavy, heavy blow that is for even 5th place. So do you think they'll manage to get back into 4th? Do you think they'll get 5th, or is 6th perhaps as good as it's going to get now?
Well, I'm beginning to think that if we keep the manager and the manager does not change the shape or the tactics, we will come 6th, because it's not getting any better away from home. And the style of play is going actually downwards. So, unfortunately, I'm having to come to a point where I'm contemplating whether the club should sack Maurizio Sarri. And it's not what any of us want. But I've had people telling me, is he just another AVB, another Scolari? And there's some truth to that, You start well for a dozen games, and then it all goes to pot. So it's impossible to say, It's the fact that the players seem to almost disconnect from the system. Instead of getting better as the season goes along, it's starting well in October, November, and it's getting worse.
Well, I'd like to say that I'm sorry for your loss, but I'm really not, and I hope that it continues into next Monday's match against United in the FA Cup. Please join us tomorrow, because Tom is leading the way with Topical Team Sheet, so I hope you enjoyed this impromptu episode of Premier League Weekly. And as I said, we'll be back tomorrow with Topical Team Sheets, and then back again for next week's lot with Premier League Weekly, the proper show, really. But until then, I'm Josh, joined by Tom. Thanks for watching.